A couple weeks ago, everyone on Reddit and then on Twitter all lost their minds over one angry game master's 44 rules for D&D. Just burying this guy. Haha, what a horrible game master. And yeah, on the surface, most of these 44 rules are obviously mean-spirited and therefore not fun. So I totally ignored this topic. However, I thought it would be a fun Game Master brainstorming exercise to try to pluck out the nuggets of wisdom and fun in each of these 44 rules for D&D. Because I'm Bob, this is where we learn how to have more fun playing RPGs together, and future Bob here. This turned out to not be a very fun video. As we read, it will become super clear that this GM was pushed beyond the point of reason because they were bullied by one or more of their adult players while the others sat by and did nothing, and then posted about it on Reddit. So their GM could be further bullied by the whole internet, and the internet just went for it and sunk their teeth in. They must not have read to the end of this list. It just gets ugly. It gets ugly, so be warned about that. But as I intended for this video, but now for an additional reason, don't make fun of this GM. We're trying to learn from this situation, and if you ever find yourself in a situation like this, please understand, those people are not your friends. Do not play with them anymore. There are so many players out there. Quote, my DM just posted this after a hiatus. Enjoy. I'll just put sheesh out now. That's going to change before anyone goes through with anything. So before we even get to rule number 1, this statement tells us that maybe some players were about to go through with quitting the group. And so, introducing house rules to spice things up, make sure everyone's having a good time, is a good call. But of course, not every player is going to mesh with every GM and every house rule, and it's fine to let them go if that's the case. Rule 1. I'm timing turns. I don't give a foot if it's unfair in your opinion because your spells are hard or you don't know what square to move to. You get 1 minute to know all the actions you want to take, or I skip your turn. So assuming this is D&D 5e, yes, combat turns can really drag, especially because every D&D 5e spell is a list of bullet points plus one or more paragraphs of information, but instead of enforcing a timer, they could try substituting for shorter worded spells from a game like Cairn or Shadowdark, and since they clearly don't like squares of movement, I hear ya, try using abstract distances from one of those games. It's so much easier. 2. If you want harder fights, bring a second character sheet and expect to twiddle your thumbs when you die. I'm not going to baby anyone. Yes, having a backup character in games with deadly battles is a good idea, but depending on your style, don't let them twiddle their thumbs, let them get right back into the action with that backup character, and then after the battle, resolve the death or resurrection of that dead character. 3. If you call me or my roles unfair, I'll get up and go home. And if you gotta ride with me, you can find your own way back and suck it up. Okay, well, the dice are always fair, period. And to an extent, I agree with the decisiveness of, if you're being disrespectful, I'm not gonna play with you. It's good to be assertive about respect, as long as you're also being reasonable about what behavior is disrespectful and the group all agrees on those boundaries of respect. 4. I'm going to take your character's loot away as regularly as you want it given out. Rule 3 will apply here. I don't like loot being under constant threat, but it does make sense to me that characters with a lot of gold and other valuable treasures should be careful about keeping those things relatively secret and safe, to quote Gandalf, who you would surely not disagree with. 5. If you don't act out any of your persuasion or intimidation or any other social checks, you fail. Before you even roll, you fail immediately because you aren't even trying and you're making the game lame for everyone else. So they're trying to incentivize roleplay, which is fun. But instead of a penalty for not doing it, why not give players a small bonus on rolls with fun descriptions? Now, this should still apply to all descriptions, not just social ones, because then you're unfairly favoring the naturally charismatic players at the table. And another issue, any kind of description will make turns take longer. So they may want to rethink this one or rule number 1 if this stays in place. 6. If you don't pick up cues for side quests, that's not my problem. Get over yourself It's not a video game, it's a role-playing, pen and paper-based game with miniatures. I'm not holding your hand if you choose not to pursue sheep. Now, this is kind of fine. Players should be able to choose what quest their party will go on, but the GM should be providing enough information so players know those quest options exist. And if they didn't know it existed, I don't see how the players could get upset about missing a side quest that they didn't know was there. 7. If you move to a square in combat, there's no takebacks. Back to squares. We all know that's how most board games work. Once you take your hand off the game piece, that's it. But it sounds like any movement is final. So I have to disagree a bit here. This furthers the case for this GM probably preferring abstract movement rather than squares for movement, and I hope they give it a shot. 8. You tell every single person what you're doing before you do it. You don't flopping roll dice and then say you're casting fireball. You tell us all. That's actually totally fine. That's literally the flow of RPGs in like every RPG rulebook. GM describes the scene, player says how their character reacts, GM describes if a roll is needed, and then what happens. 9. I will give out exhaustion more frequently. If you argue, go home, or you can actually fight me over it, or you can DM yourself. So as with any house rule, the GM should probably provide a few examples for these additional situations that will incur exhaustion. But the threat of violence definitely takes us back to Rule 3 about like basic human respect. 10. Every snide comment you make to an NPC will be remembered and paid back in triplicate. You all seem to believe there is little consequence. This is starting to sound a little like a manifesto, but to an extent, this is also okay. Some NPCs will be extra sensitive and pay back snide comments in triplicate. However, not every NPC in the game world should act like that, and yes, being mean to any NPCs should absolutely give the party a bad reputation in the game world. 11. You will not be given a mega dungeon every session. A temple is not the size of a city, neither is a cave. This shibbity will happen when it's natural and organic. Go play some roguelike if you want that. Also kind of fine, it's weird if the players expected a mega dungeon every session, partly because a mega dungeon should certainly take more than one session to explore. 12. The travel portion is done. You want to travel continents doing literally whatever you want, whenever you want? Go play World of Warcraft or play D&D with ChatGPT. It sounds like their campaign, post this hiatus described at the beginning, has shifted from world traveling to a more focused area. That's all good, but again, as long as the players have some say in the quest that their characters are going on. 13. If you're late with no good reason, I'm going to have your character's hit points for the game session. Carrot, not stick. Reward the players who are early as long as everyone has circumstances that would allow them the chance to get there early. 14. If you don't show up for no good reason, and that will be determined by me alone, if no one else has the guts to say shtick for fear of upsetting one another, the first time you will find yourself losing either a whole level or up to 3 major items of your own. The second time you do it in a row, you'll be removed from the chat and group, full stop. I have no flibbity time for people to not show up. Yeah, same as Rule 13, really. Reward early, don't penalize late, and ideally, just kick off the session with 15 or so minutes of hanging out, catching up on real life for a little bit as the late people trickle in. But yeah, then if there's a pattern of one player being consistently late, all you have to do is find out if it's spoiling the group's fun in some way. If it's not a problem for the group, it doesn't matter. If it is a problem for the group's fun, then tell that player to tighten up or find a new group, and that might sound harsh, but this goes back to respect. We are all busy, and changing up an established game time is the surest way to sow the seeds of your campaign dying off prematurely. Alright, if you get too stoned or drunk to play, I will go home without a warning. Your warning is here. For some groups, this will be totally fine. For other groups, this would be totally not fine. So just have that conversation, get everyone synced up, and players who cannot sync up with the group expectations must find a new group. 16. If you get up for bong or smoke or whatever breaks every 10 minutes, I will simply pack up and go home. I'm sick of waiting for every bloke to be at the table. Exact same response as 15. 17. Guidance, divination spells, owls, and whatever spells I decide are too fimbly stupid. They're banned outright. No more Fimjing guidance. So same as 15 again, but instead of behavior, discussing house rules, my GM recently banned Silvery Barbs mid-campaign because like 3 players had it and it stopped being fun, even for the spellcasters, because they could see that it bothered the GM. And if it's not fun anymore, don't include it in the game. Case closed. 18. You get 1 chance at a skill check. If you flirch it up, your party doesn't get their chance to do the same check. Think careful who's good at what. This kind of depends on the check itself, like perception check dogpile is annoying, agreed. But that's why the game has group checks where everyone rolls and you just take the average. And then if it's something like busting down a door, as long as there's appropriate time for more characters to make the attempt, they should be able to make the attempt. And really, if there's enough time, they might not even need to roll for it if it's just reasonable that they can complete it. 19. Discussion of metagame details in-game will result in instant damage to your character. Decide as a group whether or not something is okay. And if a player repeatedly breaks the group's rules, they are no longer part of the group. I'm starting to feel bad for these guys. 20. Rules lawyering fellow players is encouraged. Actuallying me will just result in me telling you to fling off. Same as what we just said for 19. Yeah, group expectations. 21, you roll your dice within view of 2 players who aren't you, standard. You roll them neatly and you roll them on the table. Failing to do these 3 things will auto-fail whatever you did. Arguing that you actually rolled validly when you clearly didn't is an automatic critical fail. Yeah, this group sounds like they have no respect or even trust for each other. This is sad now. 22. Instant death traps and mechanics are coming into place. If you call these things unfair moving forward, I will laugh at you and tell you to whip off and cry some more. 23. I will not give you random magical items and vendors will not stock them. They are meant to be rare and hard to acquire. We're back to okay stuff. That's fine. Low magic, low fantasy genre, assuming the group also wants to play in that genre. Random encounters in the form of random dragons, or strange mysterious road trader, or a band of goblin prostitutes isn't going to happen. Go play Baldur's Gate 3. I don't know if any of that happens in Baldur's Gate 3. But again, discuss the game you want to play as a group. 25, I don't give 2 fabs about what Reddit said about X or Y ruling. 26, I actually give less of a Felipe about what your mate's D&D group did. Now, everyone in this group, GM and players, need a real reality check at this point, so a comparison might be helpful. 27, saying anything to me about other players not liking me or not liking me doing X or Y without them saying it directly to me will result in me kicking you out of the group. Don't use someone else to push your own agenda. 28. You're not to sit down and have a 2-hour discussion about what Samson from Bundora Secondary did 3 weeks ago when you come to play. Take the 15 or 20 minutes I used to set up and review my notes to talk to each other, then sit down to play. I recommended that 15-minute chill time earlier because it's good to have that policy. Let people settle in. And hey, if people's focus starts to wane halfway through a session, maybe try to build in a mid-session break. But once again, it sounds like they have consistent problem player behavior happening here. That just can't be allowed. Yeah, this is just getting... this keeps getting more sad. Saying Shoop, like, guys, come on, we're not here to have fun. We're here to play D&D. This is serious business, is rude and dismissive of how much work I put into this. I will simply go home if I hear this. Yeah, I feel bad for this GM. At least one of their players doesn't respect them or their time or the game at all. But as I think we have learned, writing out these rules was a mistake. Have this conversation in person. And if you're not comfortable enough to even have that conversation, you just got to end this campaign. 30. Don't Forking order food randomly. We will eat together at a specific time or not at all. I don't want food synth all over my things. 31. No food or drinks near any of my D&D gear. If you wreck something, you can pay for it. I let one person trash my DM screen once and I never had it replaced by them. In fact, I had that person attempt to gaslight me into believing they didn't wreck my spindlies at all. I'm not stupid. You're an adult. Accept responsibility. No one is accepting responsibility for anything here, unfortunately. Yeah. 32. Arguments between party members outside of roleplay. Okay, so at least there's some PvP and it's not all directed at the GM, I guess. Will be resolved by me giving the definite ruling. If you don't like it, flamboozle off back home. That's kind of the point of the GM. Everyone can discuss things, GM makes the final decision, that's fine. 33. I don't give a finicky wicket what they did on Critical Role or what that one guy on Reddit said, or if you think that's all make-believe, so we can do what we want. The world I run works on internal rulings and lore that I created specifically for it. But I would say, this does sound like a good time to ask yourself, what would Matt Mercer do? Would he put up with jerks for half the campaign and then write out an angry list of rules and send it to everybody, and then one of those people, post it online? 34. Every single person in this chat is having debuffs applied to their characters that should have occurred a long time ago. This will be specific to characters. Yeah, outside of everything else with this group, if that's the case, make new characters. With everything else, definitely start a new campaign. Wipe the slate clean. 35. If you don't bring your sheet, you don't play. It's good to enforce personal responsibility, but I feel like, actually, yeah, if they're supposed to have a backup character per Rule 2, I think, the GM should just hold on to everyone's backups, and then they'd always have a character to play. 36. If you don't bring dice, borrow some. Exactly. 37. When we play D&D, I'm not your friend. That doesn't mean you treat me like an enemy during the game. It means I'm no longer being nice. It really sounds like these people are not friends, because friends don't break each other's stuff and constantly disrespect each other. Like, this is a bummer. I can't believe people just memed all over this guy for days on Twitter and Reddit. It's kind of disappointing. I feel like people must not have read all the rules to see how sad this got. 38, yeah, if you treat me poorly in any way, shape, or form. Like, this is literally a cry for help now. This is after or during or before the game, due to something that happened in the game, you're out. If you cannot separate a game from reality, which it seems like no one can, I think you're a thinking moron, and I have little time to deal with that energy. Same. I have little time to deal with this energy. 39. You will submit your spell list daily in-game. If you do not give me a spell list each in-game day, you will not be allowed to cast a single spell or cantrip in combat. I do not trust you guys to use this, not to use this against me. And there it is. Actually just can't trust their own players at all. Get out of this situation. 40. If you do not mark off spells, or you say something like, I remember what I'm at, as a way to justify it, I will simply fail your spell, deal half your health and damage to you, and say you have no spells to cast for the rest of the day. 41. If you break literally anything, you can buy the replacement that day, or not attend until you do. 42. If you complain about the choice of music, I fully expect you to bring the whole playlist to the next session, or shut the F up. 43. Cannot stress enough how little I care about how you feel about my rulings from now on. Oh, and Rule 44. I'm never just threatening you. I'm promising you. So I'm not siding with the GM, the person who wrote this, but I definitely have zero pity for the players in this group. They are allegedly breaking their stuff, criticizing their dice rolls, their rulings, their music. They're getting, drunk and high against the group's wishes, apparently, talking over the session, and just disrespecting each other in every way. Or at best, they're a bystander to all of this adult bullying for who knows how long, and then posting it on Reddit. This is why I don't read RPG horror stories. This is sad. And if you ever find yourself in a similarly sad situation, get the heck away from those people immediately. Find players who will treat you with kindness. There are so many more players out there than there are GMs. You do not have to put up with any of this. So I really hope this video helped somebody. Here's another video to watch. Thank you for your support. Thank you for treating each other with way more respect than the average user on Reddit. and Twitter, I guess, and keep building.